Then I looked one more time and the man is sprinting full speed towards me. He stopped right in front of me and said,
"Oh, I thought I was late for this bus."
"No, you're not," I said calmly, and got to take a look at his face. He looked like he was around his 40s. Brown hair, messy beard, torn up clothes. We waited at the stop for another 10 minutes and the bus was finally arriving. I stuck my arm out just to make sure the bus driver could see me. As soon as I walked up, I felt the man grab my shoulder and pull me back very hard. I instantly started to panic as both of us are now hid in the darkness of the bus stop. "What are you doing?" I said in a scared voice. It was still dark out and the bus driver obviously didn't see me with the headlights on and the rain pouring. It was at that moment I realized I was in a dark street with a creepy man putting his hands on me, probably making a horrifying face. Slowly, I looked behind my shoulder and the last thing I remembered was him hitting me in the head and knocking me out unconscious. I saw the man sleeping in a bed to my right. The adrenaline was rushing through me and all I could think about was how I could escape. I've had some training in MMA, so I didn't feel too unconfident if I needed to fight for my life. Since the guy was still asleep, I was planning on elbowing him repeatedly in the head while he was still sleeping and then find a way out. I knew this would work if I could do it correctly, so I propped up and walked to his bed. I got my arm ready and instantly he turns his head and sees me above him. I tried to hit him as hard as I could. However, with the fear at that moment, I missed. Again, I started swinging as hard and as fast as possible. But to my surprise, the man didn't block any of my fists at all. He just laid there smiling as his head got pounded. Honestly, it freaked me out even more that he wasn't doing anything. But finally, his face gave in. His nose started to bleed and a cut began to emerge on his face. I started to slow down as I ran out of stamina. His eyes closed and the smile began to fade. Instead of taking a step back, I decided to keep going and kept swinging as hard as I could. I was sure the man was out cold. The man's eyes opened and he smiled and stood up. I saw a window to my left and without hesitation I quickly ran and jumped out of it. I landed on top of a bin. His apartment was only 2 stories high, so it didn't hurt too much. It turns out it wasn't long after he kidnapped me as it was still dark. I ran away and luckily I got back to my home safely. When I got home I realized there was still blood over my hand. I felt my head and there was blood from when he hit me as well. As I rang my doorbell, I heard my dad's footsteps, followed by heavy footsteps to my left. The man followed me and was suddenly there coming towards me. My dad opened the door and I ran straight inside the house and locked it immediately. I explained everything to him. My dad, being the guy he is, swings the door open, fists clenched with me following. As we went outside and looked around, the man reappeared. I went towards him with brass knuckles on, but my father stopped me and muttered, "Hand." I looked at the man's hand to see a knife and he starts to slice the air. He gets closer and continues to swing the knife maniacally, but manages to barely slice my cheek. My dad grabs him by the arm and beats him senseless. We then caught the police and the man was locked up. Ever since that day, I've become an even more cautious of a person. It took me a while to get over the fear of that day, and that's why I no longer ride on the bus. During the weekends, I, along with my sister and friend, usually went to town around 20 minutes away to go out and eat. It was a busy area, so there were many people on the streets asking for money. After a lot of fizzy drinks, we were walking to the nearest restroom, and my friend accidentally kicked over one of the man's pot of money, and it all went under this young guy's car. The man was still in his car, so luckily she could ask him to move so she could collect the money back. She knocked on his window and asked politely for him to move. He simply stared at her for a second and replied, "All right, young lady," with an extremely large grin on his face. At the time, my sister and I could tell something was up and that man was fishy. However, there wasn't much we could do to prove it. He reversed the car ever so slightly. My friend and I went over to pick up this man's money, and he was waiting angrily. My sister, however, refused to help collect the money, and that seemed very out of character for her, and I knew something was up. She proceeded to watch us pick up the money until she stormed over to the man's car parked elsewhere. The man turned on his car and drove away as fast as he could. My sister began yelling different slurs at him. She tells us that the man was taking photos of us from his car while we were leaning over to collect the money. As there was not much we could do, we just continued to complain about the man and how disgusting it was. After this encounter, we realized we started seeing the same white car around us. But we didn't think too much of it and made jokes that it was the creepy guy and he was coming to get us. About a week later, when all three of us returned to town to go to McDonald's school, we saw multiple sticky notes stuck to my friend's fence. It said simple compliments like beautiful and gorgeous, but the ones further down said more creepy things like soft skin, and then we read yellow polka dots. Strangely enough, my friend always had a liking for yellow polka dots. We asked her whether she maybe had a mad ex-boyfriend, but she claimed she hadn't been with someone for 2 years. We were all scared and confused until my sister brought up considering the drastic increase in that white car and that homeless man saying that to us in town. It could be that creepy man who took photos of us that day, and he may have seen her underwear. We took down the sticky notes after taking a photo of it just in case. I didn't see my friend in school for the next 5 days. I tried visiting and she let me in and locked the door. All the blinds were shut and her family still weren't back from their vacation. My friend explains how this man returned during the night to put sticky notes on her fence once again spelling polka dots. I told her to call the police, but she refused. The next day, I convinced her to come along with me to talk to the homeless man and maybe we could find some answers. Luckily, he was still there. We asked him over and over to explain what he said last time or tell.
Let's go home and go to bed, wake up in the morning for school. Done. Good night. Good night. Hey, get up. You show him up. Let's go. Done.
Us if he knows about the man in the white car, but he wouldn't say anything. My sister stood at the other side of the road to keep watch. Suddenly, the man in the white car creeps up behind us, and my sister came running over and grabbed both of his arms and restrained him behind his back as if she was some kind of police officer. She told the man that she's not afraid to report him to the police and told him to get out of sight and never to disturb us again. The man was able to escape from her hold and got into his car.